It's the first Monday of the new month.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, good morning and welcome to Smell the Coffee, your favorite morning show with your favorite hosts, Dana Master and Ashwin Bedi. Good morning.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How
You
are
had
you
a good
doing?
weekend?
What weekend?
You were working the whole time?
I was working.
All right, that's fair. Saturday was cool. Lots of April Fool's jokes to go around. That was interesting to observe. Namibian Sun had an interesting one.
I
they've
think,
since
you
deleted
know,
it, but
I actually fell for that.
yeah.
I fell for that.
real?
I was like, what?
I didn't think
What do
that's
you
how they would
mean?
report it, though.
No, like I saw it and I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, this is so unbelievable.
Believable,
And
yeah.
I'm reading and I'm angry. Just for me to go on the comments, because I saw it on someone's status
Yeah.
first as a screenshot. Then I went to read the full article and someone was like, no, I actually went there to get one of my cousins just to find out that it was April Fool's Day.
Wow. It was April Fool's Day. It was an interesting one. They essentially said the fish rod folks were still being investigated, had been released, which was naturally not true. One of my favorite April Fool's jokes was Usher. So
Okay.
mid-concert, he says, I'm about to bring on a special artist, and he says Beyonce, and the crowd goes
wild.
Then he gets off stage, out of the spotlight a little bit, comes back and says April Fool's. No one was ready for that one.
Oh my
No.
goodness.
And then someone put an April Fool's up, but an Andre 3000 album coming through. And I said, there's some things we don't joke about.
And that
We've
is
waited
an
for
Andre
decades.
3000 album.
We've waited for decades before Rihanna fans.
Before Rihanna, you've been waiting longer than Rihanna
been
fans, and
waiting
that says a lot.
Yeah, no, we can't take
Have
that.
you ever played an April Fool's prank on someone?
Not really, no. Very interestingly, I've always
Never?
been worried about that. Yeah, I worry about how convincing I might be.
I see.
I worry about that.
I
I don't
see.
wanna, traumatize anyone.
I think for me, it was the obvious one. I called my mom. I was like, Mommy. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, promise me you're not going to be mad.
Oh.
She's like,
Oh,
what did you
here
do?
we go.
I was like, I'm pregnant. Yeah. And she was like, what?
Oh,
What do you mean?
yeah.
What? And I was like, before it went too far, I was like,
April Fools, bring it back. But
Yeah,
I think
man.
it's a fun day, especially obviously as long as you remember to say April Fools at the end
Yes.
of it. I think it's some good fun.
And also, if you keep the jokes, I don't know, sometimes we tend to take it a little too far.
Oh, yes,
For
yes.
example, someone would call and be like, oh, who was in a car accident.
Yeah, don't
That's
do that.
not funny.
Don't do that.
No,
And
let's
jokes
not do
about
that.
like divorce when you're married. Don't do that. Your partner won't forget.
They will not
They will not forget.
All right, we'll be back with our top stories right after this break. NMH at 1 brings you news from all corners of Namibia. NMH at 1 aims to reach viewers countrywide who are interested in current affairs in a short and sweet format. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: The Republican, Algemeine Zeitung, Namibian Sun, Namibia Media Holdings, Irongo, and Vindic Express. To share your news or advertise on this platform, contact NMH1 at synergy.com.na. NMH at 1, your lunchtime news companion. And now for some freshly brewed news. Oscar Pistorius' parole bid collapses in South Africa. The 36-year-old former Paralympian is serving 13 years for the murder of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, in 2013. The parole board met to hear evidence, including from Pistorius and Ms. Steenkamp's mother. But instead of giving a decision afterwards, embarrassed officials admitted their timings had been wrong. Earlier this week, they'd received but ignored a letter from South Africa's top appeals court, which explained that Pistorius needed to spend another another year and a half in prison before he could be considered for parole. The hearing at Atteridgeville Prison, a low-security facility in Rolling Fields just outside the city of Pretoria, should never have happened. For weeks, officials had insisted the amputee former sprinter was eligible to apply for parole, having served half of his sentence. The confusion stems from the fact that Pistorius' time in prison had been broken up by appeals and by a period of house arrest. There is disagreement about where to draw the halfway line. Pistorius' family have expressed dismay and are seeking legal clarification.
It's an interesting one.
That is an unfunny April Fool's joke.
Right, yeah. But why is he trying to run away from justice?
You know, I don't think he is. Seeing that it was the officials that had been like, no, he's eligible for parole. The fact that this slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, and this is like a top appeals court.
You know,
would you
it's
say
a top
that's very interesting. And I have to say, I mean, I'm trying to draw some kind of sympathy. I can't because River Steenkamp is dead forever.
Yeah.
So 12 years, to me, it actually feels a little disingenuous to try and cut those years short. I think at least for her family, I think, in my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term. But of course, the law allows for, you know, parole to be applied. It's
and like you were, and sorry, just to bring you back, you spoke about the family. Riva's mother actually did say that she doesn't think that Oscar is remorseful.
Yeah.
And she said she doesn't think he is rehabilitated and can be put back into society.
And there's that. With that, I mean, I'll take her opinion over anyone else's.
True,
right,
because I mean, they did lose a child.
Yeah.
And that is heartbreaking.
You'll be fine, Oscar. You'll be okay. All right, so we're going to stay with South Africa, moving to the Democratic Alliance, the DA, as the emboldened re-elected leader John Steenhuisen declared the EFF as his party's enemy number one. Steenhuisen, who walloped Mpho Phalatse to clinch his second term as party leader, said the DA must do all it can to stop the possibility of the EFF knocking on the doors of the union buildings. And talking about the EFF, we'll talk about this as well. EFF is to lead the EFF picket against Uganda's anti-homosexuality bill. Actually, Julius Malema will lead the picketing because the EFF believes the bill contravenes the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. It gives the state power to imprison people based on their identity or consensual sexual assimilation. All right, so let's break it down. We'll start off, obviously, with the DA, new leader. His public enemy, let's not say public enemy, his personal enemy, his declared enemy is the EFF.
And why?
And so I just have a question for DA. We're in Namibia.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we're not as well informed. But is EFF the ruling party?
Nope.
I'm under the impression that when you're an opposition party, your priority is to take the reins in the ruling party. So I find it interesting to create EFF as a target. It is polarizing. It's almost like he's appealing to a majority of people who may not necessarily be the majority of South Africa, but would be able to push this rhetoric. And it's worrying to me because I don't mind who, you know, people decide to go against. Yeah. But if I'm supporting a party, I would at least like to know you want to lead more than you want to oppose. It's very interesting. Hopefully it works out for them. It's an interesting strategy. What I do find also interesting, moving on, is the EFF.
I mean, definitely. That is, I always say Julius Malema is a true African, like in a sense. Like he doesn't discriminate.
No, he doesn't discriminate. This is why it's so important. When you say Pan-African, you're supposed to mean all African people. So to see Julius Malema leading the picket line against a homosexuality bill in Uganda, I can challenge you to think about the fact that you will not see this from the DA, you will not see this from the ANC. And I think that challenges the perception people have of the EFF. I'm not saying I'm essentially in support of the EFF, but I do have some qualms with the Uganda bill, and it's good to see some African parties coming through and saying, hey, this is not okay because we're talking about human rights here, and that's just their opinion. So I find it interesting.
I've noticed that with most African leaders, it's kind of like, no, it's not happening to us, so nah, we'd rather not get involved.
Exactly.
You know, so seeing the EFF and Julius actually taking a stance and leading this is I mean, I'll see why the DA say, oh, EFF is our number one enemy, because they would never be able to do that.
Which is so interesting because the perception given of the EFF is that they're regressive, when with such things like this, they paint themselves as progressive. So it's going to be interesting to see how the ANC and DA respond with regards to civilians, because I believe there's LGBTQ plus community members in every single community there is in Africa, and perhaps their voices will be heard through them or not.
I guess so. We'll see. We'll be keeping an eye on the situation. Now, moving over to Nigeria, Lagos teachers charged with girls' manslaughter. Staff at a secondary school in Nigeria have been charged with manslaughter over the death of 12-year-old girl, with a trial expected to begin in May. The Chrisland High School pupil died of asphyxiation and electrocution, an autopsy has shown. Since her death, the school has been shut down. The same school was temporarily closed last year after an alleged case of sexual violence involving students on a trip to Dubai. Recently, several other schools in Lagos have been closed after alleged incidents that resulted in the death of students, variously involving bullying, a fatal accident, and a suspected drowning during a swimming lesson.
Yikes.
It gets worse.
Very sad.
It gets worse.
It gets terrible. Like it starts bad and it just
progresses and gets worse.
I have many questions,
Yeah.
and none of them are good. You know, for obviously you want to ask why this happened, and you know, I'm here thinking of teachers, which are essentially adults, killing a young girl. What could the young girl done, I don't believe she would have done anything. No one obviously would have done anything to deserve that, which makes me feel like they perhaps had done something to her that they do not want her to reveal.
Most probably, because I mean, death by asphyxiation and electrocution.
That is
concerning,
that is
because
very
that
concerning.
means there was some level of torture in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's disheartening. And it looks like a Christian school from
It is.
everything I can see in
And
the logo.
also, with children, as parents send their children to schools. They leave the care of the parents because now it's like, okay, they're going to be in the care of teachers.
You trust them.
You trust them. The same people that are supposed to be protecting your children are the ones harming your children, like in this case of the Dubai trip.
Yeah.
Dubai is far away.
Yeah.
And obviously you're trusting these teachers to take care of your kids while abroad.
Yeah.
And now there's a whole case of sexual abuse.
This is insane.
It's crazy. But anyway, let's move on to some, I guess, good news for you, but not so good news for me.
English Premier League. Can't be anything else that she's talking about. Let's go.
Okay, let's start off. It was not a good weekend for Manchester United, despite me looking good in red and fabulous in red.
Yes.
It was a good weekend for Arsenal, though.
Yes, of course. Manchester United lost 2-0 to Newcastle at St. James Park, which means Manchester United has effectively not scored a single goal in the last month. Which started with a 7-0 defeat from Liverpool. Chelsea. I'm just saying it as it is. You know, Chelsea sacked their manager, which was also very interesting, very predictable. If the camera could come back to us. There we go. All right, I want to talk to you guys face to face. I don't want to see the logos. I want this to be personal. So in the last month, a lot of things has happened. Manchester United has not managed to score. Now, this should be forgivable. My problem is Manchester United consider themselves contenders. And I am an Arsenal fan, which means apparently I embody an elephant on top of a tree. Now, as Arsenal continues to defy gravity, what is Manchester United doing?
Hey, we're trying
their best. Their best is a goal difference of 4 goals.
Listen. I can't justify the 7-0 loss. I also can't justify yesterday's loss.
Neither can you justify 0-0 with Southampton at home.
That is not acceptable. But I don't have.
There we go. That's all right. Look, I do think what you can hope for is to fight for the top 4. Of course, if anyone has the same points as Manchester United, then that's not going to work out given that goal difference. Chelsea has sacked another manager. I think they spent more than anyone in this Premier League. I was looking, Chelsea has had over 10 managers since Jose Mourinho. Over 10.
But you see, the thing is, right now Chelsea is 11th. It's an 11th position.
Yes.
And after spending all of that money, and you still can't get to at least number 10?
Or
you
at least
be in the
score
top
a goal. That's
that is
dismal.
Concerning.
That is very concerning. But to me, it comes back to, you remember those days when we felt like Chelsea was buying the league? I think those days are done.
But hey, rumor has it that Neymar might be joining Chelsea.
Neymar might be joining Chelsea. It's okay. I understand Neymar, and I get it. Sometimes you want to diversify your portfolio by failing in different places at the same time. So, you know what? If PSG's failure didn't look nice, maybe you don't like to fail in French. Do come through and fail at Chelsea.
English.
Fail in English. We are waiting for you. All right, so those have been some of our stories on Smell the Coffee. Stick around as we come back with an interview after the break.
Tourismus Namibia is a weekly tourism show that brings you the latest news in the tourism industry and topics related to that. Tourismus aims at reaching travelers, accommodation, restaurant establishments, agricultural and financial institutions. The show focuses on tourism news, where to travel to fit your budget, 4x4 drives, routes and destinations, and so much more. Tourismus is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com and cross-chat on the following Facebook platforms: the Republikein, Algemeine Zeitung, Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. Contact Tourismus at synergy.com.na for news and advertising related queries. Tourismus, bringing the world to Namibia.
The acceleration of already high food, fertilizer and fuel prices has triggered a global crisis that could drive millions more into extreme poverty, magnifying hunger and malnutrition, whilst threatening to raise the global humanitarian caseload to new highs and erase hard-won development gains.
Food pricing is our number one problem right now as a result of all this perfect storm for 2022. But 2023, it very well will be a food availability problem.
Accessing affordable and nutritious food is becoming more and more difficult around the world. We've found ourselves living in a global food crisis.
Millions upon millions of people, in fact, 345 million people today are suffering from hunger at a crisis level.
Since early 2022, we at WFP already warned that this would be a year of unprecedented hunger. The pandemic's economic consequences play a huge part in hunger rising to unprecedented levels. At the same time, climate shocks continue to destroy lives, crops, and livelihoods, and undermine people's ability to feed themselves. Meanwhile, conflict keeps waging war on everyday life. As the biggest driver of hunger, currently 60% of the world's hungry live in areas afflicted by violence. In Ukraine, the war has transformed what was the breadbasket of the world into a major humanitarian aid recipient. Before the war began, Ukraine produced enough food to feed 400 million people per year. But when the war started, Ukraine's food exports all but stopped, trapping corn and wheat inside the country.
Really, we share a common vision of a world where every person has access to sufficient and nutritious food, and where food systems are resilient and sustainable. Together, as partners, we are committed to enhancing food and nutritional security, improving livelihoods and accelerating socio-economic outcomes for the people of Namibia. Food systems are the backbone of our economy and society. They are critical in addressing our most pressing challenges, such as poverty, hunger, climate change adaptation and mitigation. However, the current food systems are unsustainable and often fail to provide healthy and nutritious food due to various challenges. Transformative food systems are therefore critical to sustainable development, and we must work together to make them a reality. So today's event is really an opportune time where we can discuss food systems and its transformational potential. It's also allowing us to discuss strategies to transform the food systems in Namibia, to upscale the local food production, making them more inclusive, equitable, and also sustainable. As a connector of positive change, the Capricorn Foundation has started on a journey towards food security when we launched in July of last year the Capricorn Foundation Food Waste Challenge, where we called on innovative solutions from the public on how we can reduce food waste in Namibia. The foundation recognized that tons and tons of consumable food are being discarded and wasted on a daily basis, and we wanted to come to a solution that could tip over the pivotal domino on the problem of food waste. We realized that this problem could address the basic need for food security for the most vulnerable of people in Namibia and positively impact our society. The objective of the food waste challenge was to seek solutions that would effectively lead to more food, which would have otherwise been wasted, to reach the most vulnerable of society.
The World Food Programme.
Now, after a stabbing incident at El Dorado Secondary School last week, the acting Deputy Executive Director of the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, Mr. Knox Imbua, gave an update on the ministry's stance. A teacher was stabbed by a parent after his child was allegedly assaulted by a teacher. Let's take a look.
Thank you. I must maybe reiterate that it's a matter that we do not take lightly. We, as a ministry, through the regional office, has sanctioned an investigation, a preliminary investigation, in order to establish the circumstances that led to this very unfortunate event. We have also reactivated to ensure that we reinforce our school safety measures that, in fact, are expected to be in place at all times. We have also advised the school, and they've done so, to go and open a criminal case against the perpetrator, being this parent, with the relevant police station. So that has been done. We would conduct a full or a detailed investigation in order to determine the nitty-gritties that led to this issue. In our case, we consider this a criminal case that should also include the engagement of our police so that they deal with the issue. We have also internal mechanism in place where the affected teacher would be assisted with counseling using our operators in-house. But nonetheless, the education activities would continue regardless. Yeah.
Okay, what is your say on corporal disciplinary?
Well, our policy is very clear. We do not allow corporate punishment to our learners. As I'm indicating, we would investigate, but what we always advocate is that regardless of the level of transgressions that the learner undertakes at schools, there should be no corporal punishment. We have punitive measures that are in place to deal with issues of ill discipline among learners, but physical punishment, such as corporal punishment, is not among those measures.
As per our arrival yesterday, we found teachers with weapons that they found in the kids' bags and pockets. What do you think should be implemented for the kids not to bring weapons to school?
As I indicated, we need to enforce our school safety measures. In other words, ensure that all of security measures are observed. We also would engage, particularly the parents, because these are children coming from somebody's home, where we believe any measures to ensure the security of the school and those within the school, being the community itself, must start with the parents. And for us, issues of awareness among the school communities, and in particular the learners themselves, is important. Not only for this school, but again, it's an incident that alerts us to the need to ensure that at all times we must be alert at all our schools. We have security presence at all our schools. But I think it's unfortunate that at this point in time, we were caught off guard. And I think the advice and the directives to all the regional offices and the circuits and the schools is that they must immediately ensure the enforcement and strengthening of the security measures. That no school children should be allowed to come with weapons within the school premises. Those that have fencing, I think we would be introducing searches at schools randomly to ensure that these incidents does not take place. I must also indicate that we shall be engaging with the police to ensure that they assist us with random searches of schools to try and avert incidences such as this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
You've heard the saying, we've all heard the saying, all good things must come to an end. And as much as it breaks our hearts to say goodbye, it has to be done.
Yeah.
So how was today's episode for you?
It was wonderful, very insightful, a little traumatizing at parts, but for the most part, it was good. I mean, except the part where you said all good things come to an end. Arsenal's reign at the top of the league will not.
For this season. Anyway, before Ashwin comes at me yet again, I have to wrap it up. So until tomorrow, it's all our love, all our light, and adios.
Cheers.